1957 Chevrolet 3600 Task Force Wrecker.
Is there a lockout for reverse?
No. So, reverse is all the way to the left and down.
Ooh, halo.
Actually, seatbelt somewhere tucked.
Man.
Reverse is...
How do I know when I'm revving it too high?
You're revving it too high.
Okay. Come on.
This may be one of the most beautiful trucks I've ever driven because it's a marriage of elegant lines and industrial brutality. Body integral headlight visors out front and a wooden bed out back. Chrome and curves in the front and a mean-looking boom and recovery cables out back. Similar dash style as the Bel Air sedan. The shifter and four-wheel drive selector rise unceremoniously out of the floor. The chrome finish on the side mirrors has long been blasted away. It has a 100-mile-an-hour speedometer. Well, that's just fairy tales. And I like the adjustable brake pedal mod, which is just some all-thread and a nut and a lock washer. 54,195 miles? 154? 254? Who knows? I also like the exposed heater core. The airbox and squirrel fan are long gone. And this duality of the feminine-like body lines mixed with the hard right angles of a wooden bed and the toe boom make this medium-duty classic truck something that poisoned straight men can safely enjoy with each other in public.
That's what a real man gotta do, dude. And that's what goes. When I jerk a guy off, I use my special gloves to take fishing, with a little, like, I put thumbtacks in it, you can hold your bass that way, and I show the guy's dick that my dick's better, make him bleed a little bit, a little, I make sure everything's just a little bit of rusty, a little lockjaw don't hurt no one. He needs my little lockjaw, you know what I'm saying? There we go. No throttle input, almost like no throttle input in first is still too much throttle in first.
Yes, exactly.
Oh, hey. Awesome. Ooh, I like this already. Ooh, halo.
It's the world's most unforgiving transmission. No synchronized gears.
Really?
Yep. Just shift it hard, let it grind, and force it in.
Okay, so treat this like the deuce and a half I drove.
Exactly.
The more you swear at it, the better it shifts.
Yes, 100% pure violence.
Yeah.
This wrecker originally had a GM 235 cubic inch stovebolt engine. That's 3.8 liters. It's a straight six, and depending on the product, GM either called the 235 the Thrift Master or the Load Master. There also was a larger displacement one called the Job Master. Anyway, the original engine on this truck had an anemic compression ratio of 8-to-1. It made 140 horsepower at 4,200 RPM and 210 pound-feet of torque at 2,000 RPM. Look, it was the mid-20th century, and with a compression ratio of 8-to-1, it ensured that this industrial vehicle would run on whatever scum, low-grade, dirty gas you could find when you needed to drive up to Towanda in 1957 to pull a Buick Super Sedan belonging to Whistlin' Joe Blankenhorn. This old guy Joe figured out how to whistle "It's a Long Way to Tipperary," and that's now all he does. He started calling himself Whistlin' Joe and announcing his presence in church as Whistlin' Joe, and he painted that on the side of his Buick Super of his, but now it's broke because he spent all of his pension money on newspaper advertisements and billboards. They all say Whistlin' Joe. Not any business advertisements or anything, he's just advertising himself. So whatever fuel you find out there in the ground, you'll be good on a job like this. But now in 2024, this task force has a 350 swap because the owner wanted enough power to reach 50 miles an hour. The stump-pulling gearing of this non-synchronized 4-speed Muncie manual is so low, you start in second gear. Even if you're on a hill, you start in second gear. Occasionally, I'm able to slide these unsynchronized gears in nice and slick at the right RPM, but most of the time I ratchet them in. It was a lot to learn in one day. The proper way to shift the Muncie 4-speed on a 3600 Task Force is to change gear as if you're trying to stall it. Like like that. I once drove a deuce and a half, and just like that military vehicle, the more you curse at this task force, the better it shifts. So what's first gear for? Well, that's for pulling a car out of a ditch. Whatever the reduction ratio of first gear is, it's so low that the idle circuit of the carb is still creating too many revs. This 1-ton jumps forward with no throttle input. So you get into fourth gear by maybe 30 miles an hour, and you realize that you only have 20 more miles per hour before you spin that 350 too fast. And the line of cars behind me grows. I felt some confidence because there's a thick boom in the back of the truck for tailgaters to stare at, but I still felt bad because I was holding up the show everywhere I went. The world was different in 1957. The Federal Aid Highway Act only passed the year prior. The majority of that high-speed interstate system wouldn't reach completion until the early 1970s. That means that when this truck worked, the only corridors between major cities used the U.S. numbered highways, which, by today's standards, were slow, winding roads. On the old U.S. numbered highways, a slow-moving truck would be a normal occurrence. It wouldn't upset anybody. But nowadays, we're used to seeing utility trucks hauling ass at 80 or 90 miles an hour. But back in the 1950s, a tow truck this just lumbered along. When this truck arrived for filming, it lost one of its shock absorbers. It just fell off somewhere. No one knew. Still drives exactly the same. Bumpy and scary. Still bucking around like a rodeo clown inside a barrel. All with the mobility of a hospice care breakdancing competition. Driving this thing in its current state, it feels like at any point it could leave you on the side of the road, never mind that the door has trouble staying closed. Never mind that this flatbed is more rickety than an old pirate ship. Never mind it has the fuel economy of a Walmart mobility scooter. Trace, the owner, says that he maybe gets 7 miles per gallon in this thing. Cruising speed? 45. That's how fast you're going. This truck and a Honda Metropolitan scooter have similar performance numbers. Trace drove this thing all the way from Long Island to be here. With a few stops, it took him 8 hours. Thank you for doing this. He says the heater core is still working. There's no fan attached to it, but it still keeps the cab warm. The task force is the embodiment of that weathered national character that defined the 1950s. The idea that life was about family but also work, and sometimes family, but mostly work with the occasional side of family. If work dignifies the adult existence, then a truck like this gave the very act of working this stoic, noble identity. The hard-working man with calloused hands, hauling wood and laying brick. A solitary man bringing home the bacon. A truck like this feels like a reaction to the suburbanization that took off in the 1950s. The encroachment of the middle class, and with it, the diminished social capital of blue-collar work. Because who wants to wake up and put on a tie and drive a fancy station wagon off to an office with closed windows when you could be out in the world, using your hands, feeling like you've earned your sleep at the end of the day? This truck was a means to that end. People are always going to be about the grind. People are always going to want to support themselves and those they care about. But you don't really see that mentality built into trucks anymore, beyond the vague idea of being the most of something, the most horsepower, the highest top speed, the most luxurious, the most expensive. It isn't about the truck being sturdy or reliable. It's that it can tow more than another truck, or has more tech than another truck, or it has cup holders built into the tailgate and a 110 outlet back there. Maybe it sits higher, its tires poke out further, or it can squash more pedestrians per capita than another truck. It's not really about the grind, it's about the flex. Now, you absolutely still got companies marketing for comfort and curb appeal in the 1950s, but that was a different metric. Trucks were for utility, and the big comfy station wagon was for the evenings and the weekends. We didn't try to make the same vehicle do the same thing. Trucks were more a necessity facet of the American working life in the 1950s than they are today, rather than the blue-collar cosplay they seem to be now. Oh, cool, you live in a condo. Why do you need a dually with stacks higher than the Big Show's nutsack? Now, for as lousy a driving experience as this is by modern standards, the truck's survival more or less proves the old man adage that they don't make them like they used to, and to that I often say, what, like shit? But again, this came from factory with four-wheel drive in 1957. Sure, the Dodge Power Wagon did it a decade earlier, but this is still impressive that this can do the scant few things it's capable of doing at all. The Task Force series of medium-duty trucks were introduced in 1955 as an overhaul of Chevrolet's best-selling fleet. And it was their first big redesign since the 1940s, using an egg crate grille design before ditching that for the Chevy Bel Air-looking design. It's exactly the type of rugged, unadorned American truck you'd come to expect from a former Air Force service member which the original owner was. It's a truck for a sort of benign masculinity that you wouldn't think would exist in an era of
Real man values
and red pill and green pill and black pill and
shove a pill down my urethra.
haha what. But this isn't an aggressive truck despite its size. It's hard to imagine it conveying that sort of dominant vibe in its own time either. It looks honest, like a guy who'll tell you to your face that he doesn't like the way you're standing while you wait at a traffic light, but who am I to tell people how to live? It's still a rough experience driving this, and it's hard to imagine this being any better when it was new. It's the automotive equivalent of an uncle who swears he was a heartbreaker back in his day. Sure, Whistling Joe, I'll bet you were reeling them in. Just Michael McDonald amounts of tight, hot casserole clam. You know, Mom has photos of you when you were in your 20s, right? We have receipts. So either you're lying about having more double headers than Wrigley Field, or the standards in the 60s were so low that its tides could have beached an ocean liner. It feels like the appeal of this truck is the simple fact that it's still on the road. It's pure novelty. It's charming novelty, yes, but there's also something uncanny about it. An artifact that escaped a museum. A truck like this only survives through the kind of dedication only sentimentality can produce. The truck has a unique story, and we've done our best to tell it from notes, so apologizes to Trace if we got any of it wrong. Trace's mother got it for his father on his 50th birthday, but Dad got ill and couldn't drive it. It ended up going to Trace, who worked on it throughout high school to get it running. He finally got it roadworthy around 2016. And now he tries to drive it every week, both for work and for basic chores. It's basically if the movie Christine had an optional good ending. Anyway, one day Trace encountered the original owner out in the wild, and it was like old friends meeting out of the blue. The owner got to be reunited with his old truck for a little bit. And it's the sort of thing that a car enthusiast probably dreams about when it comes to cars they had to let go. Not only to see it again, but to see it up and running, in the hands of a good owner. Not everyone gets that kind of closure, and so it's nice that the man was able to have that, especially since he ended up dying the next day. As it turns out, one of Trace's friends was mutuals with the original owner, which is why Trace even found out about the passing. It was supposedly very sudden, and the service was shortly after the news broke. And so Trace attended the service for a man he just met, paying respects to a man who provided his family with a truck they all enjoyed, a truck that remains on the road today. And honestly, even if that's the best thing you can say about a 67-year-old truck, that it's still on the road, that it's still working, and it's still loved. It's pretty remarkable.
Oh, when I went to brake, right at the bottom of the thing, like the door flung open. And so I'm like, oh shit. And then I'm just like trying to grab the door, and then like his wallet fell out
of the car. Out of the truck. My wallet fell out?
You know that pocket a little Bose speaker.
And we ran over the speaker.
Yeah. Well, we didn't run over it. It just fell out.
No, we ran over.
Oh,
There's
we did?
tire marks on it.
Oh, well, shit. Sorry.
All right. I got a spare one. If you
Oh no,
want
that
to
thing's
ride.
garbage anyways. I
Yeah,
don't care
but
about
he
it.
said it didn't work already.
Yeah,
so.
the battery's shot in it. It barely holds a charge, and I honestly want to get a new one anyways because I can't hear it over most of my feet.
Weird.
Yeah, back in my day,
Know about that.
this is about real truck, and you had to go down by the turnpike if you want to suck some dick. Now you can do it right at the Wawa.